Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Application Academy Preview. Just get my video, make sure my video is okay here. Needs to change there. All right, should be good to go now. Um, Let me put. I don't want to do that. I'm going to Spotlight. Hello, everyone. Let me put a link to. We have a couple submissions for everyone here. But I would love more submissions so we can actually get a good sense of what's going on here. So, um, wait one second. I'm going to paste the link to the form to go submit. Make sure you all have it. I would love for you all. Maybe we'll start with some Q&A. Give you all some time to go and submit something so that we can review it. Remember, it's completely anonymous as much as you want it to be. Everything comes through, and I can just show you what it kind of looks like, assuming it's working. One second. As we get started here, I'm just debugging something. Something's not working right this second. I don't know why. Process old data. All right. Just give me a second there. All right. As we get started here, if you were here on Monday, let me know. If you are new here, if you haven't been here before, this is our second day of our Academy preview. Just trying to give you an idea of what Application Academy is all about. You can go ahead and leave a comment and let me know kind of where you are at in the process. My assumption is that you all are applying this cycle, but that could be a bad assumption. And I'd love to know kind of what school you're at and what you're most concerned about with the application process. First time today, says Alika. Um, Hello, Carlos. Joining us today. We have Carlos Tapia, former director of admissions at TCU, former director of student affairs at Mount Sinai. Applied to BSMD this cycle. Have some interviews. Congrats. Uh, Awesome, awesome. All right, Carlos, I'm trying to troubleshoot why our Academy essays, our preview essays, are not showing up. So I may need to do a little trick here. So just give me one second. If anyone has questions about application cycles or you have questions about this coming cycle, let us know. Go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute you. Myra, it's my second time today applying this cycle for the first time. I'm most worried about submitting on time. Vivi, also first time. Awesome, awesome. Also, we don't have a lot of people here, so you can go ahead and unmute and jump in and say hello as I, again, just troubleshoot this.
Show us your face. Get used to turning on camera because part of Academy later on is the interview, and it's better when you turn on your camera. Just it gives us the opportunity to provide better feedback to you.
Why is that not working?
Did you break it?
Yeah, I don't know. Most worried about writing good essays. You're in the right place for that. Oh, that's weird. That took forever to go. Okay, let's see if that one works. But hey, that one worked. All right, so let's do the other one. Test start. There we go. For some reason, it was like stopped. Okay, we are good to go. We have some examples. Again, I just put the link. I'll put it one more time. A link to the Airtable form if you want to go submit something. Let me just kind of show you what that looks like on our end. It looks like. Let me separate this out. Zoom share. I wish Zoom was able to share individual chat tabs, but
I think you
alas,
can.
it does not. It does allow in like when you're sharing inside of like
Hmm.
Google Meet, but Zoom doesn't show tabs. Although I don't use normal Google Chrome, so maybe there's an issue with that. Anyway, all right. So here's what it looks like to you all. So you can see here there's a code. This is an AMCAS activity most meaningful. And so we don't know who wrote this, and so it's nice and anonymous. Same thing here with this one. So I'll give you guys a minute to go. Give you all a minute to go and submit more if you would like to. Do we have any questions before we jump in, and we can review some before that? Does anyone have any questions? What types of things are we submitting? Anything related to the primary application? That's the goal for today. HM from California, planning to take the MCAT in March and apply this cycle. Awesome, awesome. Okay. No questions. How many people are usually on one of these sessions? Um, it's typically 10 to 15 normally. So this is obviously this preview session is kind of open to everyone, but once we start Academy, it's kind of a little bit busier just to start and then people kind of find their cadence. Most people do Application Academy asynchronously, meaning they submit stuff for review, they watch the recordings after. They actually don't come to the class live. I think that's where all of the value, or not all, that's where most of the value is coming live and critiquing the essays live with us. But there's tons of value in obviously watching the videos, and again, most students are doing it asynchronously like that. Will there be another set of application academy preview days prior to the March cohort? Probably. We'll see. We'll see how this these preview sessions are going. So we'll see. But if you're here now, then you don't really need to come to the March ones too. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. We got a quiet group, not off to a great start. A quiet group. They don't want to ask questions, Carlos. We like questions. So
This is why I got my coffee ready. This
yeah,
is
we're ready to go. So we'll start off here with this first one. So again, this is how Application Academy works: is we start off as a group, we answer any kind of burning questions that people have, and then we'll jump in and review stuff. Feel free to unmute, ask questions, whatever you want. If this is your essay and you are here, you are allowed to say, "Hey, this is my essay. I want to talk about it." You don't have to stay anonymous, but if you want to, you can. So we have AMCAS activity and most meaningful. So for those who don't know, so this 534 characters is kind of our system adding that, counting how many characters are here. On AMCAS, you get 700 characters for the description, and then you get a separate 1,325 characters for the most meaningful. And you can see the student added in most meaningful statement, so we don't need that in there. So let's go ahead and start off with the description itself. And the way that this works best is we'll read it and then you all chime in first. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What critiques do you have? Obviously, um, being kind and knowing that a lot of the grammar stuff can be fixed later on. We're mostly looking for story and message more than just critiquing grammar. No, you are not behind if you haven't written anything yet. That's what Academy's for. We're going to start at zero and we're going to get you through it. Can you only submit part of your personal statement? Yeah. So the way that we do it is by parts: seed, watering, conclusion, anything else, uh, to be as fair as possible to get through as much as possible. We do parts, and we feel like it works fine.
Oh, really?
All right. Thoughts on the description, students? Any thoughts on the description? So let me just clean this up. There's just obviously a copy paste kind of
It was
issue.
bothering me. I
it,
wasn't gonna say
it, was, it was
anything.
bothering me too. I'm like, I gotta fix this. All right, there you go. So students, thoughts on the description? I feel like the initial description is a little non-specific. So let's start with, what is the description for? What's the goal of the description? What do you think, students? Will, what would you have liked to see to be a little more specific? Let me ask you that.
Describe a rule.
Specifically describe the role. Yeah, so I don't really know what's going on here, right? So no one could have told me that I, a mere basketball fan with no background in the sport, would be a part of one of the best programs in the country for women's basketball. Okay, what part did you have there? How did you get involved? Potentially. Following the team since the first day I arrived at campus, I was captivated by the opportunity to support the women who had given me so much as a fan during my first 2 years at USF. Okay, again, not really sure what you're doing and how you are supporting them. Less glorifying the team. Yeah, so there's a little bit of we call it pedestalizing, or I call it pedestalizing. From working out with the players individually, running drills during practice, I became a participant in the behind the scenes complexity that operates a nationally ranked program. Student, if you are here, DM me directly. So change your chat from everyone to just me. Are you here? I want to know because I'll say something if you are here. If you're not here, then uh, it's not specific. Um, so uh, I want to know, student who is here. Oh wait, there's two people that said it's theirs. Wait a minute. Uh, hey, that doesn't work. Then it can only be one of you. They're like, that's the exact same one that I wrote.
And if both of you did, then one of you copied the other.
Wait, I'm sorry. I think I got a little confused. Yeah, yeah, okay. um, the other person was like, "Oh, I'll just comment." Um, so person who wrote this, do you know Derek Sharp, who is the voice of the radio for USF basketball, women's basketball?
USF.
Have you
University
met?
of South Florida.
Yeah.
I okay.
That I'm assuming that this is University of South Florida. Indeed do. He and I are close friends who are still in contact. Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine. I'm best friends with his wife. So small world. Um, so yeah, send me your yeah, he travels all the time. I'll talk to his wife. She's like, yeah, Derek's out with the team. They were just in the Bahamas playing the like Bahama tournament. I'm like, oh, it's so hard. Anyway, send me your name. I'll text him and tell him you say hi. All right. So more specific, right? Less glorification. Carlos, what do you think about this?
So I personally like to get to like the forefront of what this is going to be, and I
Mhm.
think a little bit at the beginning there's a lot of I hate to use storytelling because that's what we encourage folks to do, right? To use
Mhm.
story and narrative, but it almost feels like the bottom piece, right? From working out with players, I feel like that should be more at the beginning just to give us an idea of what this is because I feel like it doesn't really tell us from the beginning, other than I know it's a women's basketball undergraduate student manager.
Yep.
So that's the one thing that kind of stood out to me. Other arrived on campus, captivated by the opportunity to support women. Yeah, I mean that I think I say sticks.
Yeah. What's the impact here? Right. I want to know kind of a little bit of job duties. Doesn't have to just be a list of job duties, but what's the impact? What's going on here? Um, So let us know that. All right. It's kind of hard because a lot of times students will save some of that story for the most meaningful when you have a most meaningful one. And there's always a question of like, well, what goes in the description versus what goes in most meaningful. The biggest thing to know, at least our advice, number one, don't skip the description when you're marking something as most meaningful. That happens more often than you would expect, where students are like, oh, I thought I only did the most meaningful one. Um, and then the other thing is that this is not 2025 character single essay. Don't split it up as one continuous essay. It's the description, and then the most meaningful part of this is why was this most meaningful to you?
What I've also seen in some applications, and because I've done this with every applicant recently, is that their descriptions, the top part was very similar to the most meaningful. Like they incorporated both. And I think this is an opportunity um, to really provide other things in the narrative, right? Don't copy paste, use the same sentences to convey the same thing.
Mm. Yep.
I was shocked what I saw them sort of copying and taking some of the stuff at top, putting it in the most meaningful as well. So
Yep.
I encourage you to do that at all. Hmm.
All right. So again, as you guys read this, the goal is um, to figure out what is the goal of this, right? Most meaningful. Is this doing a job of showing who the student is in this most meaningful activity? So, feedback. Mercy, the most meaningful essay seems pretty good, honestly. Okay. Anyone else have dissenting opinions? Here's one of the things I want to challenge you all on. It's very easy in a group environment to, I forget there's a psychology term associated with it, but kind of fall in line of like if everyone's like, oh, this is really good, but you're like, oh, I don't think so. Like, speak up. Just let us know. What do you think? Group think that might be it. Um, it could say more about character. Okay, who's this essay about? I feel like it is centered around the team. Yeah, it's centered around the team. Carlos, you're shaking your head. I don't see much about the student here.
Yeah, I was thinking, I always think, right, where we're talking about meaningful,
You don't think? Come on.
it's meaningful. And I even did this right during interview prep because I have that in my mind because that's what we're doing right now is mock interviews. When you get asked the question of tell me about a time you displayed leadership, tell me about a time, right? And I wrote this down earlier because we talked about this in pre-health office hours. Um, the reflection is for you to show us some of the attributes that you're bringing to medicine versus you telling us, right? I think there's a stark contrast, and I think it's missing that here, the reflection, right? I don't know why it was the most meaningful. Was it the most meaningful because the team made it to March Madness and they beat 34 other teams? But I don't see how, other than you feeling proud because you supported the team and sort of the work to get there, why this was the most meaningful. It's almost like it's missing that reflection, right? The piece that really would tell us why it's the most meaningful. Um, if you're trying
Yeah,
to showcase teamwork, I don't, it's not landing, right? It's time landing like you're focusing on the team and not how you did to support the team.
yeah, yeah. Remember, the ultimate goal of almost all of this writing is going to be as weird and as selfish as it sounds. It's supposed to be about you. So you're using these anecdotes, you're using these experiences, you're using the team in this case to figure out how to highlight you in that situation with the team. So if you can talk about how you were able to maybe encourage one of the players that was down after a game, or supporting the players when they had a breakup or a parent was sick or something, like how are you in these situations? It doesn't have to be like clinically related in these situations, but being able to show you in this scenario is the ultimate goal through this process.
I think the other thing too that I try to explain to applicants is again, through the whole process is don't tell me like I am a leader because look, I led a team to a common goal, right? Let the story and the narrative bring that to the surface without you being so explicit because then it starts to transform into a sales pitch writing, right? Like, look, I have leadership and I have resilience and I have this. The narrative should demonstrate that as you write and the reader should be able to pick that up without you explicitly telling them.
Yep. Any questions? Let's stop. We'll answer some questions here about how we reviewed that. That's a very kind of general style of how we review things. It's like let's read it. It's quiet for a little bit. and then people chime in and give thoughts, and we explore that a little bit deeper. And the goal is so that you may not necessarily in an academy session have an essay that you submitted read, because in an academy session we may have too many submissions to review them. Now this year we are doing hour and a half long sessions versus an hour session, to be able to accommodate more. But the goal is, while we are critiquing, you're watching, you're critiquing, you're listening, and you start to understand. We're basically training little little us's. We're teaching you how we do this so that you can go back to your own writing and then apply what we have talked about, even though it may not be on your specific essays. You can apply what we talked about onto your essays and then submit again for a later exploration. And so, again, some big changes that we've made this year will help support kind of getting more essays read more often, because in previous years, we would have essay review days that were just about seeds or just about conclusions. And now we switched it to say, like, we're going to review kind of any primary thing that was submitted. So that'll help kind of keep things a little bit fresh, because it gets a little boring after a while reading 100 conclusions in a row. But it'll keep things a little bit more exciting and help us get through more stuff as well. And again, with the ultimate goal of teaching you all more stuff. All right. So, any questions about what we just covered there? I'm trying to find my chat window disappeared. There's my participant window. Where's my chat window?
You lost it.
There it goes. Oh,
Yeah, a couple
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, go. You can go ahead and read if you want.
Yeah, question about if descriptions versus most meaningful for the activity sections, are they supposed to be written in anecdotal form, or is it better to be straightforward description as they were from our resume? I It varies, right? Because I think people do write from that. I wouldn't encourage you to really just retype what's in your CV or your resume. That's not what that is for.
Yep.
Um, and you'll start to get better as you begin to write and you get feedback, especially if you join Academy. You'll start to see a lot of the writing and how folks are really describing their experiences and their most meaningful, both hand in hand, right? It's not, again, a list of things that you did to describe the experience, which then translates to what is in your resume or CV. So it's a combination, I think, a little bit of stories, anecdotes, you being just straightforward writing, but I wouldn't use the resume. That's a no. And believe it or not, we've seen that, right? Where somebody just gives us a list of the things that they did.
Yeah.
Shouldn't.
Yeah. So the for me, the description, if it is a most meaningful activity, you're going to have the description. You're going to have the most meaningful. The description, I think, still stays mostly the same. It as all of the non most meaningful ones. You're again highlighting yourself. I like to think about impact as much as possible. What did it mean to you? And then the most meaningful essay, you're answering the question, why was this most meaningful to me? And usually you don't have to, but you can for most of them, highlight an experience that shows why this was the most meaningful experience for you. So it's really two different uh, answers or questions that you're answering there. Um, Daniel you mentioned we should focus on ourselves in our essays. Do you have any suggestions or advice regarding how to avoid making them sound egocentric or self-absorbed? Carlos, I find this is a very common concern that ultimately usually isn't an issue. So someone has to try, I think, really hard to come across as self-absorbed. And it does happen. Like, hey, this comes across a little arrogant, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's yes, I know you didn't mean to sound arrogant, but this is how it's coming across, which is the power of feedback, right? And getting this feedback. Do you have any tips on this?
For me, it has to do with what I like to call humble bragging, right? Like, do you
Mm,
show that humility when talking about your accomplishment versus saying like, I am the greatest person because I've completed this? Um, so like the example that we just read, right, it's on the opposite end. There's not enough of the individual for us to really get to know the individual. So you have to find that middle ground where it's not all about you and it comes off self-absorbed, although it is about you, but to the far end where there's not enough about you that we don't know anything about you. You have to
Mhm.
find that middle ground, and you through the writing again, there is a way to do it without it coming off like I am the greatest person, therefore I am the perfect fit for your program, and I should be admitted to medical school. That's where it starts. The arrogance starts to really come off. Um, and again, through the feedback through this process, we can provide that for you, and we're honest with you, right? Like this is arrogant, and even if you're like I didn't mean it, like Dr. Gray said, we'll say, but programs are going to read this and they're going to assume right away that this is arrogant.
Yep.
So we'll encourage you to change it and think about it differently.
Yep. Just tweak it, massage it, as I like to say. HM, if you don't get your essay or activity descriptions, anything read in those 1.5 hour sessions, do we get the feedback from your team offline? No. So Application Academy is just completely online during these sessions. If essays aren't read, you can come to TA office hours. During the TA office hours, they run those differently. Where during TA office hours, the TAs will call on you and you can share your screen. It's not random like the advisor office hours. So you could do that. Or again, as I mentioned, the biggest goal here is to learn how to critique, not just have your stuff critiqued. So I really encourage you, especially beginning in the beginning, to come to as many sessions as possible and or watch as many sessions as possible throughout. Even if your essays are read that week or that session, watch the rest of the essays getting critiqued because that's where you will learn the most. I promise you. And then how we do that, like how do you keep track of which essays were read or not? So when we upload the essays into our kind of student portal, we take this code and then we just create a list in order of all of the codes that were reviewed during that session. So you could look through that list of codes and go, okay, great, my essay was reviewed. Again, I encourage you to watch as much as possible. Other people's stuff's getting reviewed, but then you can go to yours as well. All right, so we have a seed here. Got a couple more submissions, which is great.
And there was a couple questions that came in as well, but maybe we
Okay,
should.
yeah, we'll jump to the other questions after this one. All right, so as you read this, go ahead and leave your thoughts. Some of you are faster readers than others. And you can also unmute and talk through your thoughts too if you don't want to type them. Anyone? Thoughts. People are probably confused that it's leading to pursue a nursing career. Any of you confused about that by that?
Um, I just want to say this is what I submitted, so I can understand it'd be a little confusing. So I actually submitted like my introduction. I think you skipped it, the first part. So that would make maybe help to kind of make more sense. But I am pursuing medicine, not nursing.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, this introduction here. Yeah,
Yes.
got it. Yeah, we'll stay on this because I think this is fine the way it is as a seed. I don't know if we need the introduction, but we'll go back to that. Come on, friends. Someone leave a comment and then we'll jump in.
I think somebody did. Tiara said, I like
Oh
this.
yeah.
Let's
There you
see. Um, would it help to display an experience that says something about you rather than just your seed?
go. Yeah. So, uh, would it help to display an experience that says something about you rather than just your seed? So, the goal of the seed, and this may be very new to all of you, when you sign up for Academy, you'll get access to all of my books, my personal statement book, my interview book. In my personal statement book, it talks about what the seed is. The seed is kind of your first exposure to healthcare that led you to an interest in healthcare. And so this seed to me does that, right? It's a student who is acting as a interpreter, not a translator. So just change the language here. I learned a few years ago there's a technical difference between translating and interpreting. So these are interpreting, uh, and leading to pursue a career in nursing, perfectly fine, right? And then usually for students like this, there's some pivot point, we call it, that says, oh, I don't want to be a nurse. I actually want to be a physician. Overall, I think it's good seed. As a reader, I want to read more about how that led to medicine. Yeah, that's good. Um, why don't you go to nursing school? Yeah. So it, when we have just a paragraph here, it's like, wait a minute. So it's not full context, but that's okay. It's nice to try to be able to read these in these shorter terms. Okay. So the expectation is that there are other parts to this personal statement that will then explore why medicine, why physician.
It makes
Carlos,
me want
thoughts?
to know. It just makes me want to know more, right?
Hmm?
To your point, like reading it separate, right? If we're assessing like the seed, it really makes me like, where's the rest? Because I want to know more.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
complex.
Yep. And a lot of people are like, well, this isn't special. This isn't like, oh my gosh, it's not explosions. It doesn't have to be, right? It's just, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that how that's led to this interest. I can see how this nurse has left an impact on you. So that's great. Great job. So again, in Academy, I generally do this. I mark them as read just to show that they've been read. So here's the introduction that the student talked about. What do we think about this? Is it okay to have more than one seed in the personal statement? So, by our fake made up definition of a seed, there is only one seed. The seed is the first exposure that led you to an interest in healthcare. And we can hash that out if you want. Uh, my nickname in academy is the Seed Whisperer. So, what do we think about this introduction being added? Good intro. I can visualize the scene. I want to read more about the story, says Jess. Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up to that
Yeah.
specifically? It's, are you more interested to know more about the individual or more about the story in terms of what was happening with this
Mm,
code blue Bay 14?
good question. But does having the two seeds work well here since they're originally a nurse? So this introduction, uh, you could call it a seed. I call it a pivot point. So they had their initial seed that led them to healthcare, and then this is the seed that, or the pivot point that led them to physician. So the seed, right? My seed led me to physical therapy. That was my seed. I hurt my shoulder. I wanted to be a physical therapist. And then I pivoted into becoming a physician. So Jess answered your question, Carlos, how this
Okay.
led to
Yeah.
want to be a physician.
Yeah, because that's the key, right? Learning, it's the personal statement, is trying to understand the story of the individual versus like, oh, I'm more interested in the clinical, what happened in this clinical setting.
Mhm.
I think it should be, I want to know more about this individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Not bad. So here's a critique that I'll have. I've heard people say that opening a story with a code blue situation is too generic and overused. Do you think this is true? I don't. So there are definitely super cliche things, and I'll jump into that here in 1 second. Um, I think at the end of the day, good storytelling is good storytelling, and if it's authentic and I can feel the authenticity versus it being forced, I think that's the difference. So I don't think a broad answer of like avoid code blues is the answer, but I don't think everything needs a code blue. I think authenticity again is the answer. But I will say, Carlos, I don't know how many times you've read this. This is one of the most cliche things that students say about physicians during codes or trauma is this whole graceful confidence, composure. They very often will liken it to the maestro, kind of conducting the orchestra. It is super cliche, and I would avoid this because ultimately, this is just kind of a love letter to Dr. Tyndall here, or Tyndall. And again, it's not helping me understand you and why this experience for the goal here of helping me understand this pivot point into being a physician. I don't understand that from this, other than you really liked Dr. Tyndall's kind of expertise here. Because your reflection on this is basically saying, hey, it's been, hasn't been conventional. Um, and you say here, it deeply inspired my pursuit of medicine. Why? Why did it? Why? You can be a part of codes as a nurse for the rest of your life. What is it about what happened, what you see here that made you want to do this? And again, just the general kind of painting this picture of chaos, and then the physician kind of running everything calmly and smoothly is just I don't know. There's some like secret handbook out there that, that students have access to. They're like, you should describe it as an orchestra, chaos and calmness.
That, and I think also just normal day, I would say TV, right?
Mm.
Sort of TV shows that have
Grey's Anatomy.
like stuff that have, I mean, even right when it comes to police crimes and dramas, like there's all of these things and all these scenes, and you think that police work is all like that, and in reality, it's not like that.
Yep.
Uh, Not
Yeah,
everything can be solved in an hour.
exactly. I want to watch the new. Have any of you that are here? Have you watched the new show on Max with Noah
Yes,
Riley? That's his name,
yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
I love 24, the old Kiefer Sutherland show. I love that like real time storytelling. So I'm super interested to watch that. So
Two episodes out there. I like it better than like something that's out there. And I'm not like a medical drama type of person that
yeah,
watches it. And we watched the first episode and it was really good.
yeah,
I would say it's good for all pre-health students, but I don't know how real it is, but there is residents, there's medical students, and they
yeah,
all sort of intertwine in the story.
yeah.
Their roles, what they do, like sort of rank and file what happens in the ER. Uh, New residents, right? Thinking that they know everything. Medical
No.
medical students passing out. So it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a Facebook group I'm in with like 80,000 physicians, and someone posted that and they're like, "What do you think?" A lot of the physicians are like, "Hey, this is about as real as it can get." So it's good. Um Mercy says, "Unfortunately, my seed was a Grey's Anatomy episode." Yeah, we'll talk about that because that may not be a great seed. Um, Tiara, would it help to talk about wanting to help the underserved if the other paragraph was the seed? So the personal statement is all about why do you want to be a physician, not what do you want to do as a physician. That's my philosophy on the personal statement. Everyone has kind of different thoughts on it, but that's typically the one that we subscribe to. And so serving the underserved will likely come through in your activity section with the activities that you are doing that show that you're serving the underserved. All right. So again, here, so you can see how we would typically do it. If we had a long list here, I would just kind of flick my mouse and get to a random one. So let's go ahead and read this one here. Oh, did we catch up on questions? I think there were a couple that we didn't get to.
Uh,
Let's do some questions first.
there was a question about humble bragging. Should you lead the reader to see your resilience or prove the example by saying this shows my resilience? Because no, I wouldn't
Yeah.
paint sentences like this shows. Just let it come through your reading. I mean, your writing.
Yep. Show, don't tell.
Can we mention negative experiences and our most meaningful experiences? Something bad happened and I learned from it. Um, I say it's fair game, depending on how it's written. If you're going to trash something, I would say no, right? Like if you're going
Yeah.
to trash healthcare, I would say err on the side of caution. But it depends how it's written.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. Is it depends on how it's written. There are unfortunately lots of examples where students are kind of driven to medicine because they had a poor experience themselves, or with a family member, with a healthcare provider or physician. Um, and a lot of students will say, like, this physician didn't do right by me or my family, and therefore I want to be a physician to show that I can respect people. And basically what you're doing is you're saying that person sucked and I'm better and I can do better. And number one, it turns into a he said, she said, right? How are we supposed to know that the physician that was taking care of your family member, you, was actually in the wrong? Maybe they did everything right and you just didn't like either the answer or the outcome. But number two, I think trashing other people to build yourself up is just not the right answer. Um, Remember, healthcare is a team sport, and as an admissions committee member, and Carlos, you can talk to this more than I can, but your goal is to build a community of students who are gonna get together and work together and hopefully be a great community. And you are potentially highlighting this thing that says, if someone does something wrong, you're going to trash them and not try to resolve it, try to come to a common ground, etc. So my answer generally is yes, you can use the experience, but talk more about what you're taking away from it versus throwing someone under the bus.
Yeah. Fine line.
Yep.
I think that was it. I think I don't know if you did you answer would it help to talk about wanting to help the underserved if the other paragraph was the seed?
Yeah. Yeah, I talked about
Yeah.
that one.
Okay. What should my seed be if I can't remember the first experience that made me want to become a physician? I've wanted to go into medicine for as long as I can remember. Yeah,
So,
exactly what I say
yeah,
that.
Anjali, if you want to come on, we can do my seed whisperer stuff. If you want to unmute and be a little vulnerable,
Yeah, we can.
yeah, let's rock. So this whole like, oh, I've wanted to be a doctor forever, like that's never the answer. So let's chat about kind of the earliest memories, thoughts that you have around this idea.
I know it started early with first like interest in science and then more specifically like biology and anatomy.
Okay,
Um,
how old?
Elementary school, definitely.
Okay, and
And
why? What was going on then?
starting in elementary school, I started going to this science class, like an extracurricular science class. And there were like usually two sessions that we could choose from. Like someone would teach each session. I would gravitate toward the biology ones, and I got to do dissections in elementary school and middle school there too. So either I started going to the biology ones and liking them, and I would gravitate toward that. Those were like my exposures to biology and anatomy.
Hmm. Why did
And
you start going to these extracurricular sessions?
I think my parents enrolled me in this class.
Your parents are like, hey, more education is better. You go.
Yeah.
Or it's like, hey, this is childcare. We're too busy for you. You stay at school.
No, this was on Saturdays. This was a class on Saturday mornings that I would go
Yeah.
to.
Okay. So class on Saturdays. What do your parents do?
They're engineers.
They're engineers. Are you Southeast Asian based on your first name?
South Asian, yeah.
Yeah. South Asian, yeah. So typical, stereotypical engineer, doctor, or lawyer kind of family pressures, or no?
No, no pressure.
Okay. Other than, hey, you're in elementary school and I'm going to send you to Saturday school as well.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
maybe a little bit of pressure into something. Okay, so you're exploring sciences at a young age because your parents, if your parents are immigrants, many immigrant families focus on education, right? That's how you get ahead in this world. So you are in elementary school, you're doing this stuff. Talk about kind of next steps into exploration of healthcare and your thoughts around that.
I don't remember exactly like when or where I got that like clinical exposure other than my pediatrician. But I
Okay.
remember in I think seventh grade, that was when I remember telling one of my teachers like I want to be a doctor and I want to work in a hospital.
Okay.
So that's like one first memory of like me like knowing that's what I want to do.
Okay. Any injury or illnesses that you had as a kid or your parents had as a when you were a kid?
No.
No, nothing substantial there. Aunts and uncles in healthcare?
Yeah, an aunt.
Okay. Close to her?
Not really.
No. How much interaction did you have with her as a kid?
Not much, but she's an eye doctor, and I think I knew that
Okay.
even like when I was young.
Okay. So no big injuries, no big illnesses, but this interest in science and then telling your seventh grade teacher, "Hey, I want to be a doctor." When was the first time you actually kind of shadowed someone or did any sort of clinical thing, volunteering?
That was in college
Okay, much later.
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you kind of declared pre-med when you went to college?
Yeah, but I knew like throughout high school, like probably since ninth grade, that I was probably going to major in biology and that I wanted to be pre-med.
Okay. You're on that train from the beginning. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. So, I mean, there are often times where we don't remember as we go through this. So I would encourage you, this is a good exercise that I tell students to do, is go talk to your mom and your dad and siblings if you have them, or anyone else that you can talk to and be like, hey, like I was talking about this in Application Academy. And they're like, "What's Application Academy?" And you're, that doesn't matter. But I was talking about this, and we're trying to figure out kind of my interest in medicine, where that came from, how I was exposed to healthcare, because to me, there's often this correlation, right? Of like, oh, I like science, therefore I should be a doctor, right? I like science. Oh, and oh, by the way, I'm smart enough. I should be a doctor. I don't necessarily buy that. I think there are a few steps in between typically. And so go to your parents and go to anyone else at that time and be like, what was going on in our lives at that time? How would I have known about healthcare, about medicine, for me to kind of plant my flag in the ground in seventh grade saying, hey, I'm going to be a doctor, and knowing from ninth grade, I'm going to major in biology and blah, 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 and see what kind of stories they have. Because I've had students in similar situations come back to me in the next session and be like, oh my gosh, like I talked to my family member, like, don't you remember your brother had severe asthma and he was in the hospital, and it was actually you that like saved his life because you recognized that he wasn't breathing well. And then the student's like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. So go have some conversations and see if you can dig up anything that may be useful.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming on. All right. Anyone else want to try that exercise? There also is on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Um, there's a finding your seed workshop that's actually from one of our older Application Academy sessions. I put the link there. All right. So I'll share my screen again. All right. So we have, again, an activity most meaningful, right at that limit, 699 characters.
CFU is Central Florida University, or CFU, what is that?
Quantify their I led
Uh,
an effort to inoculate them, quantify their I don't know. CFU. Here's the problem with using acronyms that nobody might, and not, this is an initialism, not an acronym, an abbreviation.
yeah.
Is this some centrifuge, something or other? I don't know. CFU, colony forming unit. Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I think that's something to keep in mind, right? Because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, I'm not a physician, I'm not a PhD. Committee members can be from all walks of life. They
Yep.
might not know what you're trying to convey. And so mindful of what you're putting on there without keeping in mind that some folks might not understand that.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So the lots of reviewers, right? Even outside the committee, lots of people reviewing these can be lawyers, can be nurses, can be retired professors.
We got our first comment. Somebody said it reads like a resume.
Yep.
Talks about the impact briefly, very generic, other than the accomplishments. Right.
Okay. 11 conference abstracts, H, which I presented. Uh, Sales pitchy, right? It's a very common thing that I'll give feedback on. It's a little too sales pitchy. demonstrating my commitment to scientific inquiry, whatever that word is,
Inquiry.
inquiry. So it's a hard one to say. Um, and I think like you don't need to tell us that. You're showing us 11 conference abstracts, 8 that you're presenting. So you don't need to sell that to us.
The additional 2 competitor research awards, validating my efforts and fueling my drive for excellence.
Yeah,
It comes off as, so are you talking
braggy.
about the experience, or are you just wanting to tell us that you received awards?
Yep.
Uh, give
Yep.
her uh,
Yeah, right. So this connection too. So the activity section for me is not your place for talking about why medicine. It's to talk about the activity. You don't have to tie everything to medicine. And so research to me is not medicine. Research is research, and taking care of patient care is patient care. One doesn't have to contribute to the other. Obviously, it does, but saying that you do lots of research and you know about excellence in research and how that's going to prepare you for medicine, to me, there's not a connection there.
and we just talked, I just mentioned this, right? Where you are telling us versus showing us really and letting that come to the surface.
Yep.
Here, this is what what the writer's telling us. Like, look at me, I got awards, I published, and therefore I should be admitted into your program. And programs see that as so are 1,000 other applicants in the same sort of pool as you.
Yeah. Um. So, question, Carlos: if this was an MD PhD application, would you give the same advice?
Yes and no, because again, we're talking about the experience here and not about, it's almost like you're trying to fit in all of these things instead of separating them. I would encourage the individual, if that was the case, like you want to highlight your abstracts and your awards in a separate category to really talk about your research. Because even now, for me, it's sort of like, hey, I did research, but then the the experience really is reflecting on the abstracts, the commitment to scientific inquiry, right? The competitiveness of the research awards. So I would encourage the individual to separate these into 2 if they have room to do that. Um, just because again, it's not reading. I don't know what the individual is trying to do. It seems like they're trying to cram everything into one.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine as the MD PhD that you have more research experiences, sort of to highlight both the clinical and the research aspect of it. And so that's why better to separate for me than to try to cram it all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Yeah. Kathy, you raised your hand.
Yeah, so I'm actually the one who submitted this.
Okay.
I wanted to chime in real
Yeah,
quick.
let's chat. So
Yeah,
this is
so
the
this
benefit. You
is
can stay anonymous or you can come in and be like, hey, let's chat about it.
yeah, so this is a struggle that I've been having and something that I've just been confused on. That's why I also asked a question earlier on in the meeting whether it should be anecdotal or if it should be more like resume based.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what to focus on in the description section versus like what's my most meaningful. Sometimes I lean more towards resume writing where it's I'm listing out everything that I've accomplished rather than like focusing on what my research was actually about, like what did I actually research on and what did I do with that. Is that better than what has been shown here?
So I don't. I will answer with it's hard to say anything is better than something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always going to be case by case. I don't think there's anything wrong with this if you were like, hey, I've done 11 conference abstracts, 8 of which I presented. Where we're saying you're steering wrong is then doing the sales pitch part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are lots of times where an activity description to be able to show your impact, it's going to have some numbers in there. It's gonna be like, hey, I like if you're uh some chair in a sorority and you're like, hey, I increased sorority enrollment um, by 200%, right? It shows impact through numbers. And so if you can talk about impact through numbers, great. Not
Mm,
everything is going to need or have an anecdote in a story. Where I
mhm.
think what we're saying you're going wrong is the sales pitch
The
stuff
additional
here,
stuff.
driving excellence and
Mm,
um, scholarly discourse. So adding that stuff, I would love to know, like, what's the goal of this research? What are you trying to accomplish here? I don't see that here. So
mm,
um, a little bit more of that. So I think it can be non-anecdotal and still work perfectly fine to show who you are and what your impact is and what this goal is here. But try to stay away. Again, our recommendation: stay away from the sales pitchy stuff.
okay. Okay. So would you say like the sales pitchy stuff is more of like the additional fluff of, oh, this is how it connects to medicine or all that type
Either
of
how
stuff?
it connects to medicine or how it's making me a better person or a better physician.
Okay.
Right, this scientific inquiry that I still can't say that word. um, I promise I can speak English. So oftentimes what I will say is that students will create a list, whether in their head or in their subconscious, of like all of the qualities that they think a physician has that they then need to show in the personal statement. And this is how it comes out. Be like, okay,
Mm.
I know that physicians need scientific inquiry. And so I'm gonna check that box here. Right. This is where I'm gonna highlight that. And then in my next activity, I know that physicians need good communication skills. So I'm gonna check that box in the next one. So that's the sales pitchy stuff.
Mm, okay. Thank
You're
you. I
like, darn
see.
it, that's exactly what I
Yeah, that's basically what
did.
I did.
Yeah, it's like I've done this once or twice.
Uh,
So this is the benefit of Application Academy. You get to learn and have fun all at the same time and listen to me not knowing how to pronounce inquiry. How do you say that in Spanish, Carlos? Maybe in Spanish it'll be easier for me.
Uh, yeah.
No.
It so Spanish is
Is there not a direct translation to it?
there is a translation to it, but it's very and again we were talking about translators and interpreters. I
Yep.
wanted to become an interpreter, and depending on what the word is, so like here's scientific inquiry, right? So inquiry stands alone, but in Spanish it translates to consulta, which doesn't translate
Mm,
one for one.
yeah.
So for me, it would be la investigación, which is like research in general.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
That makes sense. Yeah. And going back to translation versus uh,
interpret.
interpretation. Interpretation is verbal, translation is written. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day here. All right, so let's go on to the most meaningful part here. feel like, Kathy, you're just mocking me at this point with inquiry in here again.
I realize that the word is there more. Oh,
How did you know my kryptonite?
I just, it came out of nowhere.
It gets pretty descriptive and less story at the end, which gives it more of a resume feel. Okay, so a little more resume thoughts there. And are you applying MD, PhD, or just MD? Or do you?
As of right now, mainly MDs,
Okay.
but if the opportunity does come up for MD, PhD for a certain school, I would consider.
How would the opportunity come up unless you apply?
Oh, well, doesn't it, like, don't you specify it near your secondaries, whether you're interested in that certain program or not?
For everything but MD, PhD. So the MD,
Ooh.
PhD application is separate. It's the same application,
Mhm.
but there are extra essays in the primary when you are designating MD, PhD. For things like MD, MBA or MD, MPH, that's where during the secondary process or kind of school onboarding process, it's like, hey, are you interested in these other programs too?
Okay, yeah, that I didn't know. That's where it was iffy for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now you know.
now I know.
And knowing's half the battle. Unfortunately, no one knows that quote. Carlos, you might. You're younger than me, so you might not know that.
The now you know template.
Knowing's half the battle. Jack knows.
Um,
Jack for the win. G.I. Joe. That's the ending of every episode. Knowing is half the battle.
I was at the tail end of the GI Joe era, so
Yeah.
like snippets of it. But no.
you guys got Barney the pink dinosaur, purple dinosaur.
Oh, wow, don't go
You
that.
guys, you guys got the junk. Oh
Hey,
man.
we got Sesame Street. It was
We
good.
got the
It
good
was
stuff.
fun time. Don't be hating on Elmo. It was the hottest selling toy. I think it was it 1989, 2000. The Tickle Me
Giggles.
Elmo. The Tickle Me Elmo was like the thing. It was
Yep.
almost like the Furbies, right? Remember when
It
the
was.
Furby craze?
Yeah. It was early.
But,
All
yeah.
right. What do we think about this one? So Daniel left their comment. Any other comments on the rest of this most meaningful?
For me, it was the sentence, the collaborative atmosphere of the lab taught me the value of teamwork and resilience again. You're
Yep.
telling me what you want me to hear, to
Mhm.
say, like, look, I got to experience this, but you're really not demonstrating it.
Yeah.
Showing me.
Yeah. Kathy, any self-critiques after hearing us critique the description part as well?
Um, I definitely, now that I'm looking back at it, see that I tend to describe more of how it impacts me rather than just letting my writing tell the story of, oh, this is actually how it impacts me. I tend to go back and reconfirm it to the
Mhm.
reader in a way, right? Thinking that they wouldn't get it. So then I just put it out in words. I feel like that's been having a negative, based on the critiques I've been seeing, as well as like the, I guess you can call it fluff for the sales pitchy
Mhm.
things. I do realize that because of the word limit, sometimes I tend to skip out on talking more of the experience in a
Mhm.
way, and then just go straight into this is impacting me by yada yada, and then connecting it straightforwardly. So I tend to skip the main, how would you say, what the reader is looking for of like, how has this experience really, like, what has it done for you and what did you get out of it?
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Good critiques. Yeah, and again, for most meaningful to me, the question that you're trying to answer is why was this most meaningful to me? Not most meaningful to my future career as a physician, but just most meaningful to me as a human being.
Yeah.
Tiara asks, what is the balance between having your reader draw the conclusion and writing enough for them to get there? Yes, that is the balance. Carlos, you have a thought on that?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? You don't want to write it all out because at that point it's just like now again it becomes this list of things that I've learned and you're telling me and you're selling yourself. So you want to leave a little bit more, you want to leave enough for them to be like, okay, this is surfacing, these themes are surfacing in this writing. The one way that I really think about it, and I always go back to this, are those attributes at the AAMC that they have for all entering medical students. Um, it's sort of like all medical schools are looking for those. How does that show up in your writing without you explicitly saying like, oh, look, here's my resilience experience, it taught me this, and here's my adaptability experience and it taught me this. Like, how do those attributes sort of present themselves or come to the surface through these experiences without you directly and explicitly saying and telling, because it almost comes off very sales pitchy. And that's what you want to avoid.
Yeah.
I always just go back to that sort of those attributes of like, how are these present and manifest themselves through your experiences in your writing.
Yep. There was one comment today. It's come up often about the vulnerability of Application Academy, of kind of putting your writing out there, putting your deepest, darkest secrets out there, your thoughts, your memories, your experiences, and what if someone steals those? And we haven't found that to be an issue at all. I think it was last session I was telling a story about a student who complained and said, "Hey, we were reviewing an essay today, and it looks exactly like mine that we reviewed a week or two ago, whatever the situation was." And so we took it seriously and said, "Oh my gosh, let's take a look at it." And what we observed was that these are two very similar situations. Um, I think it was an example of uh, um, some sort of dermatological issue as a kid, right? As eczema or something that, right, outward appearances as a kid going through high school and all of the bullying and stuff that happens and coming of age stuff is obviously very traumatic. And both students had a very similar experience of going to a dermatologist and being treated and gaining self-confidence and clearing up their skin and this and that. And so the student that felt like they were plagiarized, I think just needed to understand, and I say this always with like love and admiration, you're not special, right? Your experience in life, as unique as it feels to you, there are other people experiencing the same exact thing. And some of those people are going to be applying to medical school at the same exact time as you are. And so our goal here is to help you understand not to be unique and not to worry about being the only person with this one story, but being as authentic as possible to you. Because when you write about it, the authenticity comes out. When you talk about it in an interview, the authenticity comes out. So, yes, we don't want people plagiarizing stuff, but the people that are here, that are committing both time and money to be here, they're not the ones that are going to be stealing your essays. It's the people on Reddit that are that are not paying for anything. That those are the low class. No. Look, uh, there are people in the world that will take what they can, but I just don't think it's something we need to worry about. Will it happen? Maybe. Is it something you need to worry about? Absolutely not. So that's my piece there.
Yeah. And whoever's doing it, it sucks that you don't have an experience to write about, right? Like you're taking somebody else's idea and using it. And yeah, not good. I think schools will do the work too if they start to see similarities in some stuff in applicants and in writing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I talked to a former dean of admissions at a medical school. Actually, he was the dean of the med school. I think he's in jail now. That might tell you what med school he was from. I think I don't know if I ever pulled his episode, but anyway, um, he had talked about at one point that he's like 80% of the essays that we read are the same. And that's not a knock on the essays. That's just saying people get to this point in their life wanting to be a physician for very common reasons. And that's not bad. That just is. So I wouldn't worry about it, basically. All right. As we wrap up here, any questions about how we do reviews in Application Academy? Or other questions that you want some personal advice on? I'll
I
take
had a
that.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, for future writing, when like talking about physicians, to kind of avoid like being like too cliche about it, is it better to then like just describe or illustrate maybe like what exactly they were doing to show like their confidence or composure instead of just saying it directly?
Yeah, I don't think you need to talk about their confidence or composure. This isn't an essay about them, it's an essay about you. So I think it obviously it's going to depend on the situation, what you're writing about, and why you're writing it, and where in the application you're writing about it. But ultimately, again, you're using that physician to talk about you. So if you remember the one of the first essays we read about the nurse Deborah, with the translator story, the interpreter story, um, the student was able to talk about themselves and how that nurse made them feel. And that is the authentic aspect of it. It's not, oh, Deborah's compassionate, Deborah's empathetic, Deborah's calm, whatever. It's this person made me feel X, and I really like that, and I want to go do that too to other people.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
we had two questions that came in, Dr. Gray. The one, do you guys review the other impactful experience essays? I think you answered this, right? We review as many as we can, and then we pick up.
Yeah, so the more specific answer is when you, Mercy, if you go to that form, let me post it here again. Um, oops. And I'll share my screen here again too. I'll show it. So when you go to the form, this is what it looks like. This is obviously for the preview sessions. The submission types are here. And so the other impactful experience is right here. So you just label it here. And all of these, because this is for preview stuff and we're just doing primary applications, all of these will get filtered down into the primary application sessions. And then during secondary season, there will be an extra selection here that's for secondary essay. So yeah, we'll review anything related to the primary application is the answer.
And then we got a question about when should I start writing my personal statement if I'm applying this cycle. I personally highly encourage that you start writing now because your personal statement is going to go through various drafts and iterations. And I say the goal is to end for the end of April to have that final draft, no more changes to it. So start writing, making notes, putting your best foot forward, and making adjustments as you go, having people review it, having people read it. Does it make sense? Is it conveying what you wanted to convey? I wouldn't focus so much on the grammar at this point, just getting your thoughts flow. Are they sort of in order? that kind of stuff. And then in April, a lot of the grammar stuff will get fleshed out by you, and hopefully by a couple of your editors and reviewers that are helping you in that process. But start now. May is around the corner. It's gonna come by quick.
So fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the goal again with Application Academy is if you just go to the Application Academy website, you'll see the schedule. It's primary, 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 primary. We're hitting primary for a long time. So whether you're a little bit slower or not, that's okay. But yeah, start now. At least start with the book, the Pre-Med Playbook Guide to the Medical School Personal Statement.
I have it too. Look.
Woo!
I keep it literally on my desk because I use it for other stuff.
I'll sign it for you at our retreat.
Oh, it's too heavy. I'm not carrying it.
Would writing about being dismissed from or leaving a BSMD program be appropriate for the other impactful experiences essay? Probably not. I think a lot of students who go through the BSMD program ultimately don't finish through the program. So yeah, I think it depends on the situation. Is it like an institutional action where you actually like slapped on the wrist by the school? Then there's a separate section for that. It's called the institutional action essay. If you took a gap year, should this be mentioned in the personal statement? The personal statement is, why do you want to be a doctor? Not why do you want to be a doctor and did you take a gap year? So,
Although I will say, if it's part of your narrative, right? Like I took a gap year because I was trying to figure out, like in some form or way you incorporate it, I think it's fine. But to specifically mention, and I took a gap year to do these things, no. If it's part of your story of the why medicine, it's okay. Because I've seen it.
Yep.
And I think, I don't know if it was you, Dr. Gray, or was it one of our advisors that has also seen personal statements that start off, I didn't want anything to do with medicine, and then that literally leads into the story, right? So it is incorporated. If it's incorporated right, yes, but not spend time writing about it specifically and the thing during the gap year.
Yep. Question, will most of the academy sessions, if we were to enroll, why do you got to add that? That's like a stab to the heart. Like, I'm not going to do it. But if, are they mostly all group-based? This is Application Academy. What we did today, all of the sessions are like this, whether we're doing essay review, interview prep, those are the two session types. But yeah, lots of Q&A and this. So the one-on-one stuff, if you're interested in one-on-one, you get a discount on one-on-one stuff if you want some of that. But if you're like, yeah, the group stuff just isn't my style, then we do have one-on-one advising.
And I, considering right the if, I do challenge you that if you're not okay with the group stuff, that in the last couple of years in medical education, a lot of curriculum and a lot of teaching has gone to group.
Yep.
Sort of work, problem-based learning, team-based learning. So you're going to have to get to that comfort level at some point.
Yep. Being
able to share, receive feedback, give feedback, all that fun stuff. So sign up for Academy. It's fun.
Fun. All right, friends. Thank you for coming and hanging out. We will have a TA office hours tomorrow, so you can get a sense of who the TAs are, what that specific experience is like, because it's a little bit different. And then on Friday, we'll have interview preview on Friday with Dr. Scott Wright and myself at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you all there as well. See what that one's like. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.